It's Jade Olivier, and I'm here from Commissioner Nowak's office. So I will be your liaison for anything that you need from Commissioner Nowak or his office. I'm going to try to attend every meeting in case there's anything that you'll need to be available to you. But yeah, just came to introduce myself today.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Number 3, consider an act on requests for adjustments to relief from specific charges imposed by the district. Are there any?
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda, are there any items that any directors would like to have removed for further consideration, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, on item 5, page 18, I have a comment.
Okay, we'll remove that one. Any others? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda
So
with
moved.
the exception of number 5? And a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Number 5, review and act on the financial reports and disbursements of July 2023.
Page 18, there's a list of disbursements. And the one I just have a question about is the San Jacinto River Authority environmental fees. This 29,282, is that a once a year payment or?
Yes, sir. This is for the interceptor or the grease trap program River Authority administers on the behalf of the MUDs. And so what we do is it's actually billed at the end of the year to cover all the services completed throughout.
What's the total cost of this thing if our portion is 30,000?
I believe it's about 205,000 for the entire Woodlands, the bulk of which goes through Metro.
Is the program working from your standpoint?
There's more awareness and we have less repeat offenders. So we have less people that we have to go out and remind, hey, your grease trap needs to be pumped. It's not installed correctly. There's less grease in the system that we are seeing. So overall, we do think it's
Which probably because of Hughes Landing.
Now reallocated the 205.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve number 5?
So
And
moved.
second? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Regular agenda then. Number 8, review the district's draft fiscal year 2023-24 operating budget and recommended water rate structure.
Okay. I just want to point your attention to a couple items, the draft budget memo. And you'll see the budget itself, which is the spreadsheet, looking sheet. And then we'll get to in a minute, the water rate for typical customer, for the proposed rates. It's kind of the 3 dockets that, just wanted to highlight a couple of things on the budget. The proposed or the projected revenue for next year will be $6,792,000. Expenses would be $6,607,000. That results in a net gain of about $185,000 in the budget. Overall, in the budget, we have what's overall decrease, but the bigger item increase was the Century Sewer Repair project that's going forward this year. So that was kind of the biggest item of increase, but a lot of the other line items were down. Kind of point you to on the budget, as you know, obviously the water rates go into and the tax rate, which you'll hear about here in a minute, are the 2 revenue side items, and then on the expense side, they're all both of them there are in the tan item in the back, tan section. I'll point your attention to the second page of the budget down at the bottom. If you look at that single number, starts with 8.6, ends the year at 9.5. What that is the months of debt coverage that you have in surplus. So that's something that we look at very closely for all the districts, particularly in the situation where we are in a very aging infrastructure and infrastructure renewal mode kind of going forward over the next decade. We're looking at that. You're in really good shape right now. There's districts at 3, at 6, some at 14. What we'd like to see, especially in this environment with some of the aging infrastructure, is to be at least 9, possibly 12. But you're in a real good spot there. And as you can see, it kind of climbs it dips a little bit and then starts the year and then climbs to from 8.6 to 9.5 over the year. So that's a good sign. On the budget, on the water rate side, this year, Williams Water Agency did something that we've never done before, and that is we hired a consultant to help look at the water rates, the retail water rates. We've not increased the retail water rate since 2014. And so this year we hired a consultant. The consultant's here. Melissa Hedden is here, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what went into the development of the rates. It's essentially about a 700-page spreadsheet of data that went into the evaluation. This sheet here is really the resultant of what those new rates would look like to the average customer. That's kind of what this shows. So she's prepared to talk to you about some details of what went into it if you'd like.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Melissa Hedden. I'm a consultant who specializes in performing cost of service and rate design studies for water and wastewater utilities. I've had the pleasure of working with your staff on a large effort here for the districts and in the Woodlands. I wanted to give you kind of a high level overview of the process we went through to arrive at the recommended rates. Essentially, we look at 4 steps. And the first step in the process is to establish what we call revenue requirements. Revenue requirements are essentially the revenue we need to get out of your rate structure, your water and wastewater rate structure every year. Kind of a target of what we're trying to hit with our rate design. To do that, we start off with your 2024 budget and we make some adjustments. The primary adjustment we made off your 2024 budget, really that repair and maintenance line item, because it goes up and down fairly significantly from one year to the next. So we go in and we look at a historical period and took the historical average actual expenses to establish some sort of baseline for future projections. After we've established our revenue requirements, we then go into our what we call functionalizing our costs. We use a methodology described by the American Water Works Association, which is called the base extra capacity methodology. Base extra capacity methodology looks at 3 categories. The first category is what we call base cost of service. Our base cost of service, to understand why we look at this, first have to understand how we build water. We build a water utility with a extra capacity to handle times of peak demand. It's basically built in Texas. Our extra capacity comes into play in the summer months when we're irrigating. So if we look at our base cost of service, which is the cost of meeting our average daily demands. So if we got to live in a bubble world and we never had to have all this peaking on the system, this is our hypothetical or theoretical cost of operating the system. The extra capacity cost of service, which is our second category, are the cost of meeting that peaking demand. This is what we're adding to our expenditures just to allow us to peak in the summer months. The third category are our customer cost of service, which is essentially your customer service function, customer service representatives, billing, those types of things. Once we have our cost allocated into those 3 categories, we then allocate them to our classes of customers. For the Woodlands districts, we created 3 customer classes, which is residential, commercial, and irrigation. We allocate those 3 categories of cost to our customer classes. Our base cost of service are allocated looking at each customer class's pro rata share of those average daily demands. The extra capacity cost of service are allocated looking at each different class of customers' peaking demands on the system. And then the customer costs are allocated based off their pro rata share of our total customer count. Once we've allocated our cost to our customers, the final step is to design rates that recover those costs. For the districts in the Woodlands, we did massage that a little bit to arrive at or try to get as many districts as we could on a single rate structure. We did have 2 districts that were kind of outliers, so we put them on their own rate structure. That's kind of the gist of what we did. I am happy to answer any questions you have.
Was this just a single year projection or did you do a multiple year projection?
We did a multi-year, full year projection. We looked at a 5-year outlook. I will say the one thing on the 5-year outlook right now is that it has just inflationary impacts to it. In the future, I would highly recommend, and I think your staff will talk to you about this as well, is that he's in the process of developing a capital improvement plan that looks at replacements and rehabilitation to your aging infrastructure. Once that CIP is developed, then my recommendation is to come back and fold that into the multi-year plan as well. So we really have a full, true outlook, and you can use it for planning purposes versus just setting rates in 1 year.
So would you envision annual rate increases or let me rephrase that, annual rate changes?
So that's a great question. And it really comes down to the policies and preferences of each individual utility. I've seen it done 2 ways. One way is to do it every year. If you do that, then it allows you to be kind of responsive to changes, especially in the economic environment that we've been in for the last few years. The other way to do it, and the pros of that is it allows you to kind of keep up with inflation, and keep up with changes, especially when you're buying water from another provider. It allows you to be very responsive. When they have a change, you can put in your change and respond to that. The second option is to do where you would do it once every 2 or 3 years. And you would come in, and so what typically would happen is in the first year, you might over recover a little bit. The second year, you might under recover a little bit, but we would set it somewhere in the mid-range. That's another way to look at it. And again, that becomes a policy thing because some of my clients say, let's just take one bite at the apple. Let's do this as rarely as possible. And we don't have to listen to the phone calls. We don't have to go through the changes in our billing system. And others are like, but if we do that, we could cause rate shock to our customers by having big spikes in our rates versus just a little bit each year. So again, it really becomes a policy perspective.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Pete, how extensive is it when we do have to make changes to the rates as far as setting it up in the system for billing? We're talking about a lot of man hours and cost to it?
No, not really.
Okay.
Pretty simple. If I can, no, it's not. I was going to say, John has a handout that shows the back of the bill and you can see it where all the rates are. You can see kind of the information that has to be changed. It's not terrible. And with the new software, we're going to need to be doing that anyway as we migrate the existing accounts over to the new accounts or to the new software. So when if these rates get adopted, we'll just switch that over with it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. If you do have questions, just let your staff know and get them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, any other questions on the budget or nothing to approve today? Just
Paul.
I guess this is directed toward SJRA and specifically about Bear Branch. And if you look at 167's allocation, it's 155,000 this year. And in fiscal year 20, which is what? 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was 25,000. So it's gone up 6 times, 6-fold in 4 years. What's going on and what can we anticipate if that's the trend?
I assume you're talking about the Bear Branch budget.
Yes.
Okay. Remember last year we had repairs out at Bear Branch Dam. That was around 160,000. So that added to your last year. This year we have, well, let me back up. In last year's budget, we had budgeted $250,000 for engineering to advance the Bear Branch Dam spillway and Folsom project. Project didn't start, so that money moved into this current budget here instead. So there is money in the current budget. It went, I'm going from memory because I don't have it in front of me. We're just short of $900,000 for this coming year's budget, and we were less than 700 last year. So that's what's happening. You've got expenses on the dam. Right now, it's just engineering costs for this year's budget, and then those costs are moving forward and spread over the 5 months.
Was that tied into the money that we're trying to get as a loan from the feds?
Yes, it's tied into the 3.5 million that Crenshaw has gotten us. And so this will come out of probably the local share. And the local share is going to be about $1.75, $2 million.
And so the original start of that, I think you presented maybe in June, I think it was 901,000. And that 155 is your share of that 901 for that project he's talking about.
So what do you anticipate going forward as far as M&O for Bear Branch?
It should not, your total should go down after 2025. Because we'll start engineering in the FY24 budgets. We'll finish that up probably December of 24. And then construction will start 25. Take about a year to build the project. 9 months to a year, depending on weather and that. So it'd be your 26 budget, will you start to see numbers coming down, total numbers coming down. Maintenance on the dam itself, they're maybe 20,000, 25,000 a year just on the dam itself. But then shortly after that, you're going to start seeing construction costs, which you have the loan for on the Bear Panther Branch project, the big project. And we will have some elevated maintenance expenses when that project is done because there's more to maintain. I don't have numbers because that gets you out to FY27 more than likely.
Tell me about the 3.5 million. Is that interest bearing at the market rate or what is it?
It's federal money. We're still learning how we get, if you think back to the conversation where we said we're probably going to have to get a little bit extra local money for cash flow, because with the feds, you spend it and you apply for reimbursement, you get reimbursement within 30 to 60 days of your application. So their money is not going to be in an interest-bearing account that benefits you.
See, what I'm concerned about is that this board is concerned about the cash flow requirements for Bear Branch Dam and
Yes.
proportionate share going forward.
And we've talked about that a little bit. And so that's why I said local share for all 5 months is going to be, depending on what the price of the project is, could be 1.75, 2 million. And that has 2 to 3 months worth of cash flow built into that. And then when the project's all done and the final accounting is done, there may be some money that comes back to all MUDs because that cash flow has been replenished or returned.
Whenever we get closer to this December timeframe and this gets approved, I'd like to see a little more
Sure.
detail written out so I can absorb that a little better.
I understand.
All right, thank you.
On the O&M, there's not going to be any appreciable change in the next year than there has been in the last couple of years. It's these projects that it's talking about that are the significant difference. So I think that was the answer to your point.
All right.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, number 9.
Yeah, let me,
Go ahead,
I'm
Paul.
sorry,
Yeah.
this. So it's real scrambled here. There's just some data in this memo that numbers need to change. I'll get together with you separately. We can coordinate those with what's actually on this sheet.
Okay. Hands up.
We get another crack at this apple, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's all for now.
Then number 9, receive the financial advisor's recommendation concerning the district's proposed 2023 tax rate, determine the intended tax rate, and authorize A, the required notice that the board will consider adoption of a tax rate, and B, means of providing such notice. David?
Good afternoon, board. Happy to be here today to talk about the tax rate for the 2023 tax year. In your packet on page 21 begins our tax rate recommendation. Before I dig into the numbers there, just wanted to remind everybody the two-step process we go through to set our tax rate this year for every year. Today is step 1 of the procedure where, as is on the agenda, we're determining the rate that goes in our notice of public hearing. We publish that notice of public hearing between this meeting, next meeting. And step 2, next meeting, conduct the public hearing, levy the tax fee. And I guess what's important here for today's purposes is that the rate, the total tax rate that is determined today, and that goes in that notice of public hearing is the maximum that we can levy when we do have that step 2, our meeting next month. So with that said, let's look at the recommendation. We received 2023 values from the Montgomery Central Appraisal District that including a conservative estimate of the amount of value to be assigned to properties that remained under protest as of certification of the rolls for 2023. We are showing a 2023 net taxable value for the district of $2,191,741,129. That represents an 8.82% increase, or about $177 million increase over last year's taxable value, 2022 taxable value, which is $2,014 million or so. Last year, we had a total tax rate of 15.1359 cents. And of that, we levied 5.8859 cents for maintenance and operation. And the remainder was 9.25 cents for our debt service fund. I'm going to have to apologize here for the proposed total rate that I'm showing in our recommendation in this letter. I need to amend that ever so slightly by the 5th and 6th decimal point.
That's correct.
Yes, okay, I'm glad you noticed. I did too, and I'm still trying to figure out what happened to cause that 5th and 6th decimal point error. So yes, the number that the total tax rate that's in the letter here is 14.7252 cents. What we intended to propose as your total rate for the 2023 tax year is 14.7228 cents. 14.7228 cents is the rate that generates an 8% increase in the
Maureen, that's going to change the revenue number.
it's changed by $500.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
All right.
a very small change, and all the numbers that you're going to look in here outside of that, so that 0.0024 cent change in total tax rate would also come off your maintenance and operation rate. And so all the debt service numbers and the cash flow here are as is, no change there. And then really the amount of maintenance tax revenue that would change would be $500. So just again, apologize for that change and that mistake, but it's really not terribly impactful. So again, the total proposed rate for 2022 is 14.7228 cents, with 6.2228 cents for maintenance and operation, and the remainder 8.5 cents for debt service. So let's look at the debt service side, which is page 2 of our recommendation, and the cash flow that we review each year as part of our tax rate considerations. I really just point you to the kind of center there where we have our new taxable value, the 2.19 billion. You can see the recommended debt service tax rate of 8.5 cents. That tax rate on that value, 99% tax collections, generates about $1.84 million of tax revenue for debt service obligations. And as you can see under the column titled current debt service on the second row, during 2024, your debt service obligations total around $2,070,000. So we're going to draw down a little bit on your debt service fund year over year, right? So our levy is about $150,000 plus or so shy of the debt service requirements. And so we would end the year in 2024 calendar year with an ending balance of $472,000. Now that balance, since our debt service obligations decrease in 2025, right? You can see they go from about 2,070,000 to 1.2 million. That 472,000 is sufficient, has a reasonable amount of coverage of the following year's debt service obligations because of those debt service obligations of the following year are relatively low, right? So that's the reason for the 8.5 cent total post rate for debt service. Again, it gets us to where we need to be at the end of the year as far as, money's in our debt service fund. If you look below the cash flow, 3 boxes, the top box gives some information on our maintenance and operation rate. Last year, on last year's value, the 5.8859 cents, 99% tax collections generated about $1.173 million. Outside of the $500 change, you can see there, the proposed 6.2228 cent M&O rate would generate about $1,350,238, 99% cash collections. And again, I apologize for that proposed, amended rate here that we're talking about, but $1.35 million in either case. And what kind of is driving our whole tax rate recommendation here, you can see in that middle box, the average homestead value last year was $390,424. This year, $433,490. So about a $43,000 difference or 11% increase year over year. Our proposed rate it is targeted to have that percent change in tax bill on the average homestead be 8%, right? So the amended rate, again, 14.7228 cents. That results in a tax bill of $638, which is still 8% an increase year over year. Final box here, just again, some more information on the tax rate limitations in the water code that are guiding our recommendation today. You'll see the tax rate to avoid a rollback election. That is the tax rate that generates a 10% increase in the tax bill on the average homestead from last year. And that tax rate to avoid a rollback election is our recommended total as amended today. So again, 14.7228%. So we're coming down on the M&O on the debt service side. I think the 8.5 cents is sufficient. The remainder is, the 6.2 cents for M&O. We're showing about 6 cents or so is necessary to balance your budget. We're just above that. And so I think, levying the total rate, again, increase the tax bill on the average homestead by 8% is what we need to do to balance the budget and meet our debt service obligation. So again, apologize for the last minute change here, but happy to answer any questions you'll have.
We certainly want to make the change so we don't incur a $20,000 election bill.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And for $500. Yes, I'll talk about that.
Can you tell us why you're only using a 2% interest projection for the year when current environment says closer to 5%?
That's a good point. And, I guess my answer there is that we have that interest earnings consideration is in our debt service cash flow. Our debt service cash flow considers your fund balances through 2051. I think certainly we can rely on 5% for the next year or two